Now, this is from a Freedom of Information request. Deaths from COVID-19 with no other underlying cause. In other words, people that were otherwise healthy, that don't have heart disease, that don't have lung disease, that don't have diabetes, and yet died of COVID-19. Freedom of Information request, and the Freedom of Information request was answered by the Office for National Statistics, and you can read the actual report there. Now, this actually came out last month. Deaths registered from 2020 and 2021. So death registrations for 2020 and 2021. For deaths where COVID-19 was listed as the underlying cause of death, as the underlying cause, but had no other pre-existing condition recorded on the death certificate for England and Wales. So this is just England and Wales data. It's not actually for all of the UK. And this will be updated quarterly. So this takes us up for the first 3 quarters. So this information is for deaths in 2020, all of 2020, and the first 3 quarters. That's up to September, isn't it? 2021. And let's look at what it is. And without being melodramatic about it, it's really quite surprising. Surprisingly low. So here we have deaths for 2020. So the total deaths where COVID-19 was the only cause of death on the death certificate. Therefore, we can assume that the people didn't have comorbidities. So that's for 2020. The total deaths was 9,400. 0 to 64 was 1,549. Over 65s was 7,851. And actually, the average age, when we take all these together, but for the whole figures of combined, the average age was about 81.5 years or thereabouts. So even though these are over 65s, the vast majority of these were much older. So that was for 2020. And of course, that was the first year of the pandemic. We had no vaccines. Treatments were just being developed. Now, first quarter, January, February, March 2021, total deaths from COVID-19, 6,483 for all of England and Wales. 0 to 64 years of age, 1,560. Over 65, 4,923 total deaths. And again, the average age here was around about that 81.5 year mark. The average age much greater. Second quarter, so that's January, February, March, April, May, June for 2021. Total deaths were 346 because, of course, we had a dip then. 0 to 64, 153. Over 65s, 193. So pretty low. The third quarter, taking us up to September, total deaths 1,142, 0 to 64, 521, 65 and over 630. So where COVID-19 is the only attributable cause of death, we see that the rate of death is actually remarkably low. Now, there are still deaths, but it's much lower than we've been thinking, and it's much lower than mainstream media seems to be intimating. Therefore, 2020 and the first 3 quarters of 2021, total deaths from COVID alone, 17,371. Of this, 13,597 were 65 or over. Of this 17,371 that we're talking about, 3,774 were under 65. And the average age of death from COVID over the whole time in the UK is actually a bit higher than I thought. Average age of death in the UK from COVID-19 in 2021, so this is 2021 data, 82.5 years of age. So the average person that died. So obviously that means a lot of people were over 82.5 years of age to make it up for an average for those that were under. So that is the average age of death in 2021. That's actually for all of UK, so that's more than England and Wales. So that's all of UK there. 82.5 years was the average age of death. And the total number of deaths where COVID-19 was the only attributable factor, 17,371. Average life expectancy in the UK, well, it turns out that this figure here is higher than the average life expectancy. Average life expectancy in the UK, so this is 2018 to 2020. And of course, 2020, obviously, includes the first year of the pandemic. And the average there was 79 for men and 82.9 for women. And so, as we see, the average age of death from COVID-19 was actually greater than the average life expectancy in the UK. This is it's really quite profound data, this really. 17,371 deaths where COVID was the only attributable cause. So what we're saying is, as of the end of September, there's 1,731 deaths where COVID was the only attributable cause. Now, what's the official government data saying there? Within 28 days of a positive test, up to the end of September, 137,133 people died. And the difference there is a factor of 7.9. So the official figures were pretty well 8 times higher than those where COVID-19 was the only attributable cause of death.